at this point, we all know who SpongeBob is. I mean, who doesn't? He is the most iconic cartoon character of all time, and he was part of everyone's childhood. His iconic laughter, his equally as iconic friends, and many other things that made the show so beloved by many. But what if I told you that there was one episode of SpongeBob that revealed that not everything in the show is the way it seems? This episode reveals that SpongeBob isn't as happy and happy-go-lucky as we made him out to be in the series, as we will soon learn. So, join me as we read this classic creepypasta from long ago, titled SpongeBob Lost Episode. Does anyone remember the SpongeBob episode, The Sponge Who Could Fly, that aired in March 2003? It was dubbed the Lost Episode by its composers based on the episode's plotline. Well, Patsy the Pirate uses a treasure map to find the SpongeBob episode that he lost. The night before the episode was aired, I was sick with the stomach flu. I was feeling too ill to fall asleep, so I stayed up and watched TV to pass the time. At around 2:30 a.m., my stomach started to settle, so I planned to turn the TV off and try to fall asleep. But as I was reaching for my remote control, the opening for SpongeBob SquarePants started playing. SpongeBob was my favorite show at the time, so I couldn't miss out on watching it. Though I thought it was kind of strange that they were showing SpongeBob in the middle of the night, but I didn't think too much of it. I was a kid after all. When the opening played, I noticed that the contrast of the animation was slightly darker than usual, and the theme song sounded a bit harsh and raspy. This made me feel a little uncomfortable, but I tried brushing it off. The title card read, Lost Episode, so I figured that there was a mishap and Nickelodeon was accidentally airing The Sponge Who Could Fly. When the episode started playing, it immediately looked out of the ordinary. It started off with SpongeBob sitting on his bed, slouched and looking forlorn. This was definitely not the SpongeBob I knew. SpongeBob is so optimistic all the time. Why would he be acting like this? After about 10 seconds of seeing SpongeBob like this, he let out a big sigh, then looked over to his bedside belly, and the screen zoomed in on a pill bar that was sitting beside his clock. Once the screen zoomed in close enough to read the text on the bottle, it showed that it was a Prozac bottle. The show then panned to a scene with a much brighter contrast, showing SpongeBob taking one of the pins, then running off smiling and laughing. The fact that SpongeBob had to take pills to be, well, himself, made me feel uneasy. Especially because mental disorders and antidepressants are more mature things that obviously shouldn't find its place in any kids' cartoon. It should be noted that this was seen on a show intended for kids. The screen then flicked back to the original scene of SpongeBob looking depressed, while at the same time changing the contrast back to the darker one. The screen froze on SpongeBob for a few seconds, then flickered to a new scene. This scene showed SpongeBob at his desk, the same one that he has in the episode Procrastination, with his Prozac bottle, a piece of pepper, and a pencil. In this scene, instead of staying at one contrast, the colors kept on flickering from light to dark. SpongeBob grabbed the pencil in his hand and a tear rolled down his face. The part that bothered me the most was that the tear didn't look like the usual blue cartoon style tears the characters in SpongeBob and other cartoon characters cry out. This tear looked realistic, as if it had been a drop of water rolling down my TV screen from his eye. SpongeBob wiped the tear from his face with his sleeve and began to write on the paper, reading out loud what he was writing. "I can't take it anymore," he said. As soon as he got that sentence out, a faint noise started playing in the background. It sounded like a child crying. This noise continued playing as SpongeBob continued writing. My life has been horrible and hasn't gotten any better. My friend Patrick is the only best friend because he doesn't know any better. My neighbor Squidward hates my guts. He probably would be happy if I wasn't around anymore. SpongeBob stopped writing and talking and started weeping rather loudly. The color frequently started getting faster, and the cries in the background started getting louder, and it sounded like more children were beginning to cry. It could have just been in my imagination, but I remember hearing one of the children faintly yell, "He's gonna do it!" The children's cries get louder, and the colors kept flickering faster and faster as SpongeBob continues writing. The only job I can get is being the fry cook at the Krusty Krab. My boss, Mr. Krabs, refuses to give me an actual paycheck. He basically uses me to get more customers. I'm in my 20s, and I still don't have my driver's license. Sandy is the only girl I ever met in my life, and even she's just a friend. She never had any real interest in me. I'm pretty sure she is my friend because she feels sorry for me. I'm sorry if I'm hurting anyone at all for doing this. I can't live like this anymore. The screen froze for a few seconds. Then the show continued with SpongeBob writing his final sentence. The contrast staying dark instead of flickering from light to dark, and the children's crying stopped. It was absolute silence except for SpongeBob saying one word. Goodbye. Then the cries came back. SpongeBob quickly stood up, twisted off the lid of the processor, dripped his head back, and let all of the pills in the bar fall into his mouth, which he swallowed whole. The screen twitched and the animation was darker but still visible. SpongeBob clenched his stomach and vomited out pure Owen's stomach vial. It was clear that his body was trying to cleanse itself from the overdose, but it was no use. SpongeBob collapsed onto the floor, dead, and lied there until the screen turned to static. And it went to commercials like nothing had ever happened. Needless to say, I was scared out of my mind, and sleep was out of the question. Recently, I've been looking for this episode all over the internet, but not even one website even seems to have it, or even a mention of it in any blogs or websites. If you recognize this episode, please let me know.